My phone buzzed at 8:14 in the morning with a text from my husband that said, "Happy 5 years, sweetheart. Stuck on a conference call till noon, but I already booked Lucas for tonight. I love you more every year." I was sitting in the back booth of the bakery I own, frosting a 6-tier wedding cake for a Saturday delivery, and through the front window I watched him walk in wearing the gray cashmere coat I'd given him for Christmas, his arm wrapped around a blonde woman I didn't recognize, and watched him pull out her chair at the corner table like a gentleman, like he did for me on our first date. I set down the piping bag. My hands were shaking, but I didn't go out there. I'd learned that lesson already 3 years into running my own business. You don't make a scene in your own shop. You watch. You wait. You find out what you're actually dealing with before you blow up your whole life over something you can't undo. She laughed at something he said, tilted her head back, and put her hand flat against his chest. He didn't pull away. He leaned into it. "My name is Ren Calloway." "No, that's not right. Let me start where it actually started, 3 weeks earlier, because by the time I was standing behind that window watching my husband touch another woman's face, the truth was already bigger and uglier than one affair. I just didn't know it yet. I'm 29. I own a bakery called Marigold and Salt on the east side of Nashville, and 3 weeks before my 5th wedding anniversary, I started getting sick. It came on slow, a wave of nausea in the mornings that I blamed on the new espresso machine fumes. Then the exhaustion, the kind that made me fall asleep sitting up at 8 p.m., while my husband Caleb sat across from me on the couch scrolling his phone and telling me I worked too hard, that I should slow down, that he worried about me. I appreciated that he worried. I genuinely did. We'd built this life together. He managed commercial real estate. I baked wedding cakes that got featured in 2 bridal magazines, and on paper, we looked like the couple everyone wanted to be. I didn't know yet that on paper was exactly the right phrase, because there were papers. Papers I hadn't seen. The morning everything cracked open started 2 hours before sunrise. I was at the bakery prepping a 5-tier order. Flour on my forearms, the ovens just starting to warm, when my sister-in-law Petra walked in early. She did the books for me 3 mornings a week, had since the divorce from her own husband left her needing the income, and me needing someone I trusted with the numbers. Petra was Caleb's older sister, sharp-eyed, no-nonsense, the kind of woman who noticed things. "Has Caleb said anything to you about refinancing the shop?" she asked, not even looking up from the laptop. I froze with a spatula in my hand. "Refinancing what?" "I don't have a mortgage on the shop, Petra. I own it outright." Grandma Iris left it to me free and clear. Petra finally looked up. Her face did something I'd never seen it do before, a kind of careful blankness that people wear when they're deciding how much to tell you. "Then why," she said slowly, "did I get a call yesterday from a loan officer at First Cumberland asking to verify your income for a business equity loan application with your signature on it?" The room got very quiet. I could hear the convection oven humming. "I never signed anything," I said. "I know," Petra said. "That's why I'm asking. I didn't sleep that night." I lay next to Caleb, listening to him breathe, the same easy rhythm he always had, like a man with nothing on his conscience, and I started doing what I should have started doing months earlier. I started paying attention. The next morning, I told him I had an early supplier meeting, and instead I sat in my car outside our house and watched him leave for work at 7:40, except he didn't turn toward downtown. He turned toward the interstate, toward Franklin, 25 minutes in the wrong direction. I followed him at a careful distance, my hands sweating on the wheel, and watched him pull into the parking lot of a glass office building with a sign out front that read Vestridge Capital Partners. He wasn't dressed for a site visit. He was dressed like a man going to a meeting about something he didn't want me to know about. I didn't go in. I drove home, and I did something I'd never done in 5 years of marriage. I went into his home office, the little room off the garage he called his den, and I went through his desk. I found the loan documents in the third drawer down, under a stack of old tax returns. A business equity loan application against Marigold and Salt for $340,000, my signature forged at the bottom. And it wasn't even a good forgery, just close enough that a bank clerk wouldn't look twice. Behind it was a printed email chain between Caleb and a man named Desmond Trace, who I'd later learn was a senior partner at Vestridge Capital. Once the loan clears and you've got POA, we close on the lot behind her building within 30 days. The shop's worthless to us. It's the land we want for the Marigold Corridor redevelopment. Make sure she signs the POA before she gets suspicious. M says she can keep her occupied through the anniversary, so we're good on timeline. M. I read that name 4 times before it landed. Emily. My best friend since culinary school. The maid of honor at my wedding. The woman who'd helped me pick the marble countertops for the bakery. The woman who, I now understood with a kind of falling elevator clarity, was the blonde woman at the corner table laughing with her hand on my husband's chest. I sat on the floor of that office for almost an hour. Then I did what my grandmother would have done. She ran that bakery for 40 years and buried 2 husbands who underestimated her. I got up and I got smart. I drove straight to my doctor's office, not because I thought I needed a checkup, but because of one line further down in that email thread, one I'd almost missed. Keep her stressed and run down. Easier to get a signature out of someone who's exhausted and not thinking straight. M's handling the social pressure. You handle the home front. I'd been exhausted for 3 weeks. Nauseous most mornings. I'd chalked it up to stress, to the upcoming wedding season, to working too many hours. But I hadn't been drinking coffee at home in almost a month. Caleb had switched us both to this wellness tea. He said he'd read about, brewed every morning before I woke up, a thermos he insisted on making for me to take to the shop. I'd been touched by the gesture. I'd told people my husband made me tea every morning like it was something out of a movie. I asked my doctor, a calm, no-nonsense woman named Dr. Okonkwo, who'd been treating me for years, to run a full panel and almost as an afterthought, to test a sample of the tea itself. I brought in what was left in the thermos, sealed in a mason jar, feeling stupid and paranoid and right all at once. 3 days later, she called me into her office instead of giving me results over the phone, which told me everything before she said a word. Camille, she said. That's me. That's my name. Camille Iris Calloway, named for the grandmother who left me everything. The tea contains a measurable concentration of a laxative diuretic compound, not enough to be lethal, enough to keep you dehydrated, fatigued, and nauseous on a near-daily basis if consumed consistently over weeks. I have to ask you directly. Do you feel safe in your home? I told her the truth. I didn't know anymore. I want to tell you that I went straight to the police that day, screaming, demanding justice. But that's not what happened. And if you've ever been the person standing in the wreckage of your own life, trying to figure out which direction is up, you'll understand why. I needed more. A forged signature and a thermos of tampered tea would get me a restraining order. Maybe, if I was lucky and the judge believed me, it would not get me everything. And by then, I didn't just want to be safe. I wanted to know exactly how far this went, and I wanted them to lose everything the way they'd planned for me to. So I called the one person in my life who'd know what to do with evidence like this. My college roommate, Asha Brennan, who'd become a detective with the Metro Nashville Police Department and who I hadn't seen in person in almost 2 years because life gets like that. She met me at a coffee shop 2 towns over, off-duty in jeans, and she went very still and very focused as I laid out the loan application, the forged signature, the email chain, the lab results on the tea. "This isn't just fraud," she said after a long silence. "If they're administering a substance to incapacitate you for the purpose of coercion, that's assault. Possibly worse depending on what else they're planning. Camille, I need you to not confront either of them yet. If you do, they bury the evidence and lawyer up and we get nothing. I want a paper trail. I want recordings if you can legally get them. Tennessee's one-party consent, so anything you record yourself is fair game. I want you documenting every single thing. That was 4 days before my anniversary. The day I watched Caleb walk Emily into Luca's. Except, they didn't actually go to Luca's that night, did they? I was having coffee at the counter. They came to my bakery first in the morning like I told you, and I watched through the glass while frosting a wedding cake with hands that didn't shake nearly as much as I expected them to, because by then, I already knew. I'd already started building the trap. I bought a small camera disguised as a phone charger and plugged it into the outlet behind Caleb's desk in the den. I started keeping a second phone, a prepaid one Asha helped me get, for recording. I stopped drinking the tea entirely, pouring it down the bathroom sink every morning and refilling the thermos with plain water so he'd think it was working. Within 5 days, without the compound in my system, I felt like a different person. Clear-headed. Sharp. Angry in a way that had a destination instead of just spinning in circles. The camera caught him 11 days later. I wasn't even home. I was at the shop, but I watched the footage that night with my stomach in knots. Caleb sitting at his desk on the phone with Desmond Trace, the Vestridge partner, his voice easy and businesslike in a way that made my skin crawl. She's been off her game lately, tired all the time, hasn't even questioned the loan paperwork yet. Once I get her to sign the power of attorney, I'm telling her it's so I can handle the insurance claim on the storm damage from March. She'll believe that. We're golden. You said the redevelopment vote is in October? A pause. Then Desmond's voice, tinny through the speaker. October 14th. If we don't have the lot secured by then, the whole corridor deal falls apart and Vestridge loses the contract. We need that POA signed by the end of September. Hard deadline. September. That gave me 6 weeks. I almost called Asha right then to have them both arrested. But there was still a piece I didn't have. What happened to me, to the shop, to my grandmother's building? If I refused to sign and they got desperate. I found out 2 nights later, and it's the part of this story that still makes my hands cold when I think about it. I'd started leaving my second phone recording in my purse whenever I was around Caleb, tucked in the outer pocket, screen dark, just running. We were eating dinner. He'd made pasta, something he almost never did, trying extra hard that week in a way that should have tipped me off sooner. And his real phone rang. I was having coffee at the counter. He stepped into the hallway to take it, but my purse was sitting right there on the kitchen counter, close enough that the recording caught most of it. It was Emily. I recognized her voice, instantly even distorted, through the phone speaker. The same voice that had cried with me at my own bachelorette party. She's not signing fast enough, Caleb. We're running out of time. I know. I'm working on it. Maybe we speed up the symptoms. Double the dose for a few days, really knock her flat. She'll sign anything to make it stop. She's not exactly tough. I had to set down my fork. I had to physically hold the edge of the counter. And if she goes to a doctor and they find something in her system? Caleb's voice, lower now, careful. Then it's a stress-related thing. She's been overworking. Who's going to test for it specifically unless someone tells them to look? Just don't get sloppy. A pause, and then Emily's voice again, softer, almost intimate in a way that turned my stomach. Once this closes, we're set, baby. Vestridge is paying you $200,000 as a finder's fee on top of whatever you walk away with from the divorce settlement. We could actually do it. Portugal. The house you showed me. Baby. I'd been calling her my best friend for 11 years. I'd held her hair back the night she got dumped by her college boyfriend. I'd been planning to ask her to be the godmother if Caleb and I ever had kids, a conversation we'd actually had, drunk, on my back porch 2 summers ago, both of us crying happy tears about a future that apparently was never supposed to include me being alive in it the way I imagined. I didn't sleep that night either. But somewhere in those dark hours, lying next to a man who'd been counting down the days until I either signed away my grandmother's legacy or got sick enough that I would, something in me went very still and very clear, the way water goes still right before it freezes. I called Asha at 6 in the morning. "I have everything," I told her. "I need a plan, and I need it to end with both of them in handcuffs, in front of witnesses, where there's no room for either of them to lie their way out of it." "You want a confrontation," Asha said. "I want them to think they've won, right up until the second they realize they haven't." It took 5 more weeks to set it all up properly. Asha needed warrants, corroborating financial records pulled from Vestridge through a subpoena once she had enough probable cause, statements from Dr. Okonkwo, a forensic handwriting analyst, to confirm the forged signature. I spent those weeks doing something that took more discipline than almost anything else in this entire ordeal, acting completely normal. I drank my fake tea. I let Caleb kiss my forehead. I told Emily, over coffee one Sunday, how much it meant to me that she'd been checking in on me so much lately, how lucky I was to have a friend like her. She smiled and said she'd always have my back. I didn't flinch. On the morning of our 5th anniversary, the morning I watched him walk Emily into my own bakery, that wasn't an accident, by the way. That wasn't him being careless. Asha and I had planted it. I'd told Emily 2 days earlier that I'd be at a wholesale flower supplier across town all morning doing inventory, a lie designed to get back to Caleb exactly the way I expected it would, so he'd feel safe bringing her somewhere close, somewhere convenient, somewhere he thought I'd never see. I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him sloppy. And from the back office, through the glass partition, I watched the two of them order coffee and croissants at my own counter, completely unaware that 2 undercover detectives were sitting 3 tables away, and that I had 11 weeks of recorded evidence sitting in a folder on Asha's desk with both their names on it. I let them have their morning. Then I planned the dinner. I told Caleb I wanted to host our anniversary at the shop that night instead of going out. "Sentimental," I said, since it's where we'd actually met 5 years before, when he'd come in for his mother's birthday cake and stayed to talk to me for 2 hours after closing. He loved that idea. He suggested inviting people, making it a real celebration. I agreed, and I built the guest list myself. His mother, who adored me and had no idea what her son was doing. My own mother, flown in from Memphis. Petra, who by then knew almost everything because I'd needed someone in the family on my side. Dr. Okonkwo, who I introduced to everyone simply as a friend. Father Daniel, who'd married us 5 years earlier. Emily, of course, glowing, certain she was about to win everything. And Desmond Trace, who I invited personally over a friendly phone call as Caleb's wife, finally putting a face to the man who's been so good to my husband, and who showed up in a navy suit looking pleased with himself, having no idea I knew exactly who he was. Asha and her partner sat at the bar in plain clothes, badges tucked away, drinking sparkling water and watching everything. I served 7 courses that night, and before each one I told the table a different piece of the truth, calm and clear, my voice not shaking once, even when Emily's face went the color of the tablecloth. The forged loan signature, the redevelopment scheme with Vestridge, the tea and the lab report confirming what was in it, the recording of Caleb on the phone with Desmond, the recording of Caleb on the phone with Emily. Double the dose, she's not exactly tough, and watching that particular memory land on Caleb's mother's face was something I will never forget for the rest of my life. By the time I got to the 7th course, a single piece of dark chocolate set in front of an empty plate, Caleb wasn't pretending anymore. He was just sitting there, gray-faced, staring at the tablecloth. Asha stood up from the bar. "Caleb Calloway, you're under arrest for aggravated assault, conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery." She looked at Desmond, who had gone very pale and was reaching for his phone. "Don't," she said, and then, to him, Desmond Trace, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and criminal coercion. Her partner moved to Emily, who was sobbing, who kept saying my name like it would do anything at all. Emily Voss, you're under arrest for conspiracy and administering a harmful substance. Caleb's mother left the restaurant that night without saying a word to her son and called me 3 days later, crying, to apologize for a sin that was never hers. The trial took 4 months. Caleb got 9 years for assault and fraud, no possibility of early release for the first 6. Desmond Trace lost his job, his license with the real estate board, and got 5 years, most of which the prosecutor told me he'd likely serve closer to 3 given the plea deal he eventually took to avoid trial. Emily got 18 months and 5 years probation after her own lawyer convinced her to cooperate and testify against the men, which I understood strategically and forgave exactly none of, because some bridges you don't rebuild, you just walk away from the wreckage and let the river take it. The land deal collapsed the second the fraud charges became public. Vestridge pulled out of the redevelopment corridor entirely rather than be associated with a criminal case, and Marigold and Salt is still standing exactly where my grandmother built it 60 years ago, with my name on the deed and nobody else's. I didn't take his money in the divorce. I didn't want it. What I built instead, 6 months after the trial ended, was something my grandmother would have understood better than anyone. A small fund through the shop that gives working capital and free legal consultation to women rebuilding businesses after financial abuse, women who've had a signature forged or a loan taken out in their name by someone they trusted with everything. We've helped 11 women so far. I think about that more than I think about Caleb. Most days. I still make tea every morning. Just for myself. No thermos, no gestures. Nothing hidden in it but warm water and a little honey, and I drink every drop of it standing in my own kitchen, in my own house, that nobody can take from me anymore.